Welcome back. So, today I thought I would talk about drones. I'm going to be talking about drones in general because a lot has changed from the last edition. I will be talking about the sort of standard types of drones. I've got a couple of models here actually. So, I've got three models. I'm going to be talking about the standard drones that you see either attached to units or as a unit by themselves. They're usually called tactical drones. You can find them in the Tau Codex under Fast Attack, or usually they're attached to commanders, crisis teams, stealth teams, fire warriors, a whole bunch of different stuff. Now, in the new Tau Codex, there's a massive list of all the drones, which is really nice to have it all in one place. There's about 4 pages before all of the other data sheets. So what I'm going to do today, though, is I'm not going to go through all of those drones. I'm going to go through the more specialized drones when I talk about those units. So as an example, the shielded missile drones, if I've talked about the Riptide. So what I'll do is today I'll talk about the 3 tactical drones, the standard drones, as well as all of the ways in which drones have changed and how they affect your units, how they don't affect your units, stratagems that work with them, all of that stuff. So to start, let's have a look. What are tactical drones? As I said in the Fast Attack section on page 115, you can find something marked tactical drones. This is if you want to keep them as a unit of themselves, so just drones in the unit. But these are also the drones that you attach to other units. So you'll see in a profile, this unit may take up to 2 drones, and they're usually the 3 main types. So we've got our marker drones, which usually have like a little marker light like that. We've got our gun drones, which have 2 pulse carbines attached to them. And we've got our shield drones, which usually just have this lower dome part to represent a shield generator. For some reason, they also usually have 2 aerials, but it doesn't really matter, honestly, as long as you can separate them and be like, yep, gun drone's got the guns on it, marker drone's got a marker light, and shield drone has got the little shield dome at the bottom. So anyhow, these 3 drones, they all have very similar profiles. So I'll go over them to start. Drones all move 10 inches. They've got weapon skill and ballistic skill 5 up, strength 3, toughness 4, 1 wound, 1 attack, leadership 6, and a 4+ armor save. The one difference to that is the shield drone, which will have 2 wounds and a 4+ invulnerable save as well as the armor save. So each of these drones has its own special thing. The shield drone, of course, has 2 wounds and a shield generator for 4+ invulnerable, just making them tougher. The gun drone will have 2 pulse carbines attached to it. And the marker drone will, of course, have a marker light, so it can perform the marker light action. Now, gun drones are a little tricky because they have a couple of rules baked into them that don't make them very good as offensive units anyways. So when we look at the gun drone profile, we see it's got the 2 pulse carbines, which is actually a decent amount of firepower. It's 4 shots. And the pulse carbine has gone up in range, so 24-inch range now. But it's got this little ability called Threat Identification Protocol. I like that they call it an ability when in fact they probably mean detriment. But what it's got, Threat Identification Protocol, each time this model makes a ranged attack, it can only target the nearest eligible unit. So it's not very smart. It has to target the closest thing, which is kind of frustrating. Now, it is the cheapest of the drones, the gun drone, at 8 points. The marker drone, which can target whatever it wants. It doesn't have this little thing where it's got to target the nearest unit. The marker drone can target whatever it wants. They cost 10 points. And then the shield drone, which of course doesn't target anything because it's got no weapons, is 12 points. They'll be the same amount of points, 8, 10, and 12, if you buy them in a unit on their own, or if you have them attached to other units and you pay points that way. So there are a few things to kind of consider when we have drones that are attached to units. Let's start with those. So first, let's go through, you've got a whole bunch of abilities here that kind of govern how the drones work when connected to units, when attached to your army, whatever. They do all get the sept keyword, so they'll get your sept benefits. They can benefit from marker lights. They can get most of the abilities that your army and your units can have, which is real nice. So one, they just have Manta Strike, which means if they're attached to units or if they're units on their own, they can deep strike in, which is really nice. Then we have a few things that kind of benefit having drones attached to units, because of course they're not their own units now. It used to be in 7th edition, 8th edition, that you would take a drone, a couple of drones attached to a squad, and when you deployed that squad, the unit and the drones would then become separate units. So you'd have the unit of drones and the unit that you deployed itself. Let's say it was a commander with 2 drones. So that commander would be its own unit, and then the drones would be its own unit. And if the drones were close to any units, they could basically take hits for those units. It doesn't work like that anymore. Now, the drones that are part of a unit can take the first hits from that unit, but not for others. There is a stratagem for that, but we'll get to that later. So, we then have an ability called Valued Sacrifice. Each time a drone model in a unit is destroyed, it is ignored for the purpose of morale tests. If this unit also contains models without the drone keyword. Okay, so what's that mean? That means if you've got that same commander, here, let me give you a little example. Let's say we've got our commander here, and our commander has a marker drone and a shield drone. And something targets the commander somehow, whether it's melee or close range shooting, something, and takes out those 2 drones. So when the unit is targeted, you can decide to take the wounds on the drones first, like you would any other unit with multiple models. You decide where the wounds get allocated. Now, if those models are removed, there's no problems for morale or leadership with the drones being removed. That's essentially what it means. It does say, though, that if the model also contains, if the unit also contains models without the drone keyword. So this is there because if you have a unit that's only drones and you lose models, then leadership is still a factor. That's why that's there. Artificial helpers. Drone models are ignored for the purposes of the Lookout Sir rule, determining this unit's starting strength and whether this unit is below half strength. So again, we've got these things where leadership, morale, any of those tests, they don't matter if you're only losing the drones. Once you start losing actual models in the unit that are not drones, then you still have to count that, but it doesn't matter if you're removing the drones. It's no problem. Determining the unit's toughness characteristic. This one's really big. It's mostly a benefit. So, once again, if it also contains models without the drone keyword. So if it's a unit of only drones, they're toughness 4, that's just how it's going to be. If it's that same commander, which would be toughness 5, then the drones, when the unit is targeted, count as being toughness 5 effectively. Your opponent is wounding the unit as though it's toughness 5 for everything. It doesn't matter if you have more drones than other models, it's okay. So this can be really good for crisis suits that are toughness 5. This means your drones are getting wounded as though they're toughness 5. For riptides, that one's really nice because they're toughness 7, which means those drones that are normally toughness 4 are getting wounded as though they're toughness 7. So, limited parameters. If this unit contains only drones, this unit cannot perform actions. So no actions when it comes to, setting up some relay or retrieving data or any of those mission secondaries. They can't do it. They can do the fire marker lights action if they've got marker lights, of course. Then it says, and it loses the objective secured ability if it has it and cannot gain it through any means. Then we have a few more. Any models, let me go back there. If the unit contains only drone models. So if you've got drones attached to other units, those units can still perform actions. And some drones will gain certain benefits and certain keywords. Once again, those drones that gain these benefits and keywords are only the tactical drones. Your gun, your shield, your marker. Those are the ones. So it says this here. All drone models have the following keywords: drone and fly. They just get those. Drone models do not gain the keywords of any units that contain them, excluding tactical drones. And then references page 115, where you can find the tactical drone profile, which again, marker drone, shield drone, gun drone. Those are the ones. So they can gain keywords from the units they're in. If they're with a squad of fire warriors, they will have objective secured because they are troops. Because they're in a unit that is not only drones. So we can see that a unit of only drones gets a lot of things taken away from them. And in some cases, they're just really not worth taking. In some they are, but again, we'll get to that in a little bit later. They also get this though. For the purposes of interacting with terrain features, drone models count as having the infantry keyword. So they don't have the infantry keyword, but when interacting with terrain features, they count as having it. This means getting types of cover or other things of that variety, which is really, really nice. Now, the good thing is, usually when things have to go through terrain, you have to remove a bit of your movement, but since they have fly, they can just go right past over it because they all have the fly keyword and they just get it by default. All right. Then finally, we have one more thing for docked drones. These are the ones that are attached to your devilfish, attached to your piranhas, attached to your other vehicles. And this is what it says for that. Any weapons this model is equipped with are considered to be equipped to the model it is docked with instead. So that's for things like ballistic skill and targeting. So if you've got 2 gun drones on a devilfish, they'll be shooting at the devilfish's ballistic skill 4, and you'll be able to just target whatever you want because it counts it like the devilfish is shooting those weapons, which is nice. So basically the devilfish just has 4 pulse carbines when it's got the 2 drones attached to it. Now, attacks cannot be allocated to the models, so they can't be allocated to the drones. It's targeting the vehicle. And it does not count as a model on the battlefield for any rules purposes. So while they're attached, it just doesn't count. If the model is docked with it, if the model it is docked with is destroyed, this drone model is destroyed as well. So you no longer get to disembark the drones when the vehicle dies. They just count as destroyed. There's a stratagem that allows the drones to separate, because you can't separate them otherwise. So you have to pay a CP. It's a little tricky, but use this stratagem in your command phase. Select 1 Tau Empire unit from your army that is not within engagement range of any enemy units and contains both drone models and models without the drone keyword. Split the unit into 2 units, one containing all the drone models and the other containing all the models without the drone keyword. So that could be also for, say, a crisis team with drones. You could just separate them if you want to. If any of those drone models are docked with another model, set them up within 1 inch of the model they are docked with before splitting the unit. The drone models are no longer docked with that vehicle. So this happens in the command phase, something to keep in mind. So in the command phase, boom, For 1 CP, you can detach the unit of drones, you can separate them from a vehicle, you're allowed to do that. It's kind of it's very situational, but you might find yourself in a situation where you want to do this. Let's say, for example, your devilfish is at like 2 or 3 wounds remaining, and you know it's probably going to die in some way soon. You can detach those 2 drones before it does so the drones don't die with it. And then you've got a unit of 2 drones that can go around and do whatever you need them to do, essentially. They can shoot a little bit, they can, block out certain units, they can move, do something, whatever. So the drones, just because they cannot perform actions, does not mean they cannot go on to objectives and just be there on the objective. It's not performing an action, it's just holding an objective. So it could be another unit that just holds an objective, and then your opponent would have to target both the really crippled devilfish and the 2 drones, so they become separate. That could be pretty useful. Now these units also have another stratagem attached to them, which is savior protocols. This used to be the general thing where drones could just tank wounds for anything, any units. Now it's a stratagem. Use it in any phase. When a saving throw is failed for a model in a sept unit from your army, select 1 friendly drone model within 3 inches of that unit. It's got to be within 3. Or within 6 if that unit contains a model equipped with a drone controller. So we'll talk about drone controllers too. The drone model is destroyed, and the damage characteristic of the attack is changed to 0. This can be really helpful for a very high damage attack, and you can just get 1 drone to absorb that damage. It doesn't matter if it's, say, a shield drone or a gun drone or something. In fact, you probably wouldn't want it to be a shield drone because they have more wounds, and the drone just gets destroyed anyways. So it could be a gun drone, it could be a shield drone, it could be any kind of drone. It'll take the same hit and just die, basically, to save a hit, which is nice. Now, I said we'd talk about drone controllers. Drone controllers are a little finicky now. You can't get them everywhere the way you used to. They're not this sort of general purpose support system you see everywhere. A few units have access to them. Some of them get them for free, like the Ghost Keel, for some reason, has a drone controller attached to it. What else can get them? I believe Pathfinders can get a drone controller. You got to pay for it, though. And there are a couple of other units that can pick up drone controllers. Either way, they essentially, they allow that stratagem to be within 6 inches as opposed to 3, but they also give gun drones ballistic skill 4, which is nice, improvement in ballistic skill, and they don't have to target the nearest unit. So it turns those drones into something that's a lot more versatile than they actually are. And the way it's worded too is it's not +1 to their ballistic skill. It changes them to ballistic skill 4, which means if you've got marker lights, or another way of getting a +1 to your shooting, you're still getting that +1 to your shooting in addition to being ballistic skill 4, because you're not stacking multiple +1s to hit. What you're getting is ballistic skill 4 and then your +1 from whatever source. So they'd be hitting on 3s, which can make a unit of gun drones quite powerful. The tricky thing is getting them within range of the drone controller. So the drone controller it's not just a static buff aura that's just there, and any drones that go nearby will gain that benefit. The way that it works is that in the command phase, you have to select a drone unit to gain that benefit. So there's a lot of planning that kind of has to go into it. So drone controllers I don't really see as something that's super worthwhile building around, because you've got to sort of declare it first, and it just makes your drones basically hit like fire warriors with pulse carbines. They've got more of them, so you've got more shots, which is really nice, but you've got to angle things in such a way to make them worthwhile. It seems kind of weird. And again, not everything can take drone controllers, and some units have to pay for them, which is kind of frustrating. So drone controllers, I don't know. It's going to sort of depend on the unit, I think, and how you want to build it up. Then, last but not least, we'll talk about the unit itself. So when it's only a unit of drones, they have to be 4. So you've got to have 4 drones minimum, and you can have up to 12. So you can have a huge unit of 12 drones. Keep in mind, though, that leadership is a thing when you're all drones, and they're only leadership 6. So they can take a serious hit if you get a bunch of them destroyed from morale. So that's something to keep in mind. Is it worth having a unit of drones? It depends which drones. Having a unit of shield drones doesn't really do much of anything anymore. You can't really block for other units. You can use the stratagem, but again, you can only use that once, so not really. And if you did that, why would you pay for shield drones to do that when any other drone could do it anyways? So that kind of is not really a great option. I mean, they could be a tough objective holding unit. They can't perform actions, so whatever. They can hold objectives, they can screen things out if you want, but you don't need really a unit of shield drones to do that. They're a little tougher, so there is that goes with it. So if you want a tough screening unit or a tough objective holding unit, that could be something. A unit of gun drones isn't all that terrible because they're cheap. It's only, let's see, it's 8 points each. So you'd be basically getting, what is it? Yeah, it's a little less than 40 points, huh? Yeah, it's like 32 points for a unit. So it's not bad for 4 gun drones. Of course, you can add more to it. You can also mix and match, by the way. So you're allowed to have gun drones and marker drones and shield drones all in the same unit in any variation of those numbers. A unit of gun drones may be kind of good. Depends. They can deep strike, which is something to keep in mind. The issue, though, is that if you want to deep strike them or you want to get them within range of, say, a drone controller, it's tricky because deep striking or manta striking happens at the end of the movement phase. And you have to declare a unit for the drone controller in the command phase before that. You can't do that if they're not on the table yet. So that becomes kind of tricky. Unit of gun drones, I don't know. A unit of marker drones seems like a decent idea, though, because markers now don't run off ballistic skill, which is really nice. It's just an ability that goes off on a 3+. Whether you're Pathfinders, whether you're, your Cadre Fireblade with a marker light, or whether you're drones. So having a unit of 4 marker drones could be quite useful. They're mobile, they can zip and pop over terrain, they can target something. It's a relatively cheap unit too, 40 points for 4 of them. And it could be a pretty solid unit. So that's the only one I see really kind of working out when it comes to being a unit on its own. Because the thing is, you're not going to get a heck of a lot of the benefits. You're not going to be able to do much of anything. You can't perform actions. But you could use a few marker lights, just pop them onto something, which can be quite nice. So, drones overall, they've changed a lot. They are now part of a unit. They don't separate unless you use the stratagem. They remain attached to the vehicle and are destroyed when the vehicle is destroyed, unless you pay for that stratagem. They cannot tank for other units necessarily, again, unless you pay for another stratagem. And as a unit on their own, they're not particularly good. As part of other units, they're very good. The standard drones, for sure. Very, very good. Shield drones as part of something you want to keep alive, like a big unit of crisis suits, they're wonderful. Marker drones, as part of different units, could be a good way to get marker lights out around the table. And marker drones are allowed to move and do the marker light action. So that can be quite useful. And gun drones attached to a unit can add a little bit of extra punch. You've just got to keep in mind that they have to target the nearest unit. Unless there's a drone controller that you called the ability for in the command phase. So it could be good, for example, if you're deep striking a unit of crisis suits and you position them in such a way that makes the closest unit something you'd like to target with those drones, and then the crisis suits are free to join in and target the same unit or target something else or whatever. So if you move them correctly, it could be good. And they're really cheap at 8 points a model, and they're good as added wounds for the squad, because the more of them you take off all those drones, doesn't count for morale, who cares? Doesn't matter. And you're not losing your really pricey units. So overall, drones have changed a little bit. I think it's a little simpler now. They're part of the unit, makes it a little easier, and they are attached to squads, but they don't get all those drawbacks of being attached to squads, like calculating toughness and morale and all that jazz. Anyhow, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.